policies and budget priorities are beginning to coalesce at the Capitol. Joining me in the studio to discuss the perspective and priorities of the House Republicans is Speaker Kurt Daudt. Welcome.
Well, thanks for having me.
The proposed budget surplus is forecast to grow into future years, prompting calls from your caucus for tax cuts. The Star Tribune editorial board recently pointed out that inflation is omitted from the forecast, so the surplus may be an unrealistically rosy picture. How can you balance tax cuts and the state's fiscal health?
Well, I think we have an expectation, just as any Minnesotan would, that first of all, we have to live within our means, just like a family budget. A family has to live within their means. You can't spend more money than you take in. We also know that a business or a family is going to find efficiencies and find ways to do things better and more efficient. And so, putting the budget together doesn't mean that every dime that we've spent in the past gets spent again automatically, and then on top of that, we just add new things. And I think Minnesotans expect us to go back and look at every program and make sure that it still is effective, it's still achieving the goals that it was set out to achieve. And has technology given us ways to do things more efficiently? And I think the answer to that is yes. And I think we just have to find those things. Our job is difficult because state government is large, but I think we owe it to Minnesotans to do the best job that we can. And how do you balance the two? I think, we've seen kind of surpluses continued now for the last, I forget, 4 or 6 forecasts, something like that. So we've got a pretty good record of having continued surpluses without real tax relief back to Minnesotans. Remember that a surplus means that we're collecting more money than we need to operate state government.
But it is only projected.
Well, that's true. Not one penny has come in yet, but those projections have been fairly accurate, at least in the last run of 3 to 4 years. So I think we're confident that the economy is improving. We're seeing improvements in the national economy, which will help here in Minnesota and should, if anything, kind of guarantee that we may have even more revenue than we think we're going to have in the next biennium. So I don't think there's a lot of thought right now that things could get worse. So I think it is time to invest back in Minnesotans, to give them some tax relief, to let them reinvest their money in their families or in their business, which is going to help grow the economy and ultimately will help us bring in more revenue in the future. So we need a growing, thriving economy.
We do. Are those tax cuts targeted, or are they across the board? Do you have some groups that you really want to help more than others, perhaps?
Well, I think we'd like to make the tax code more fair, and I think a broad swath of that will be for middle-class Minnesotans, middle-income Minnesotans. I think we want to make sure that we're helping out farmers on their property taxes. That's been an issue we've heard a lot about. We want to make sure that small rural businesses get some property tax relief. But mainly we want to make sure that Minnesotans get some money back in their pockets that then they can decide how to best invest that in their own families. We think that's good for Minnesota. It's good for those families, and it's good for our economy.
Transportation is an issue that keeps getting caught. What is your caucus's plan to handle transportation?
Well, we don't have a set plan yet. We're kind of working through the process. I think my instructions, I have a new transportation chair in the House in Representative Paul Torkelson. He's a great guy, very thoughtful, and he's going to go through a process of, first of all, determining what is the problem, how big is the problem, and you kind of have to wrap your arms around the problem before you can figure out which solution is right for that problem. My guess is that he's going to come up with something that is going to have broad bipartisan support. I think our solution definitely will have some general fund dollars in it. I think we can use some of the surplus. We're not proposing to give every dime back to Minnesotans, and Minnesotans very frequently tell us that they'd like us to take some of the surplus and invest that in our road and bridge infrastructure. We think that's appropriate and fair, and so that will be part of our plan. I don't know how much, but I would guess we could do something like we've proposed in the past, which was the auto parts sales tax. In order to make that a dedicated stream, as your question suggests, you'd need to probably put that on a ballot and constitutionally dedicate it. So that could be one option. But I think there needs to be a general fund component to whatever solution we put in place. So I would look for that.
But you're also possibly open to a dedicated stream of funding for transportation
even the stream that we would take out of the general fund, we would want to be dedicated. We understand the importance of knowing and planning out ahead of time how much, these projects sometimes can be multi-year projects and sometimes tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of dollars. They need to be able to plan for those ahead of time. And they need to plan beyond that. What's the next project? And they need to know how much money they're going to have coming in order to plan for what projects we can actually accomplish. So yeah, we'll look at other revenue sources as well, but anything that we look at, we think we'll look at dedicating.
Is there an appetite in your caucus for any new spending for programs, say education or elderly care or pre-kindergarten or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think all of those, we did a big investment in our aging and long-term care. In fact, the House, for the first time ever in the last biennium under my leadership, created an aging and long-term care committee. We did some really what I call generational reform surrounding long-term care, but the problem's not done there. We need to continue and make sure that we're really taking care of those folks, and that's a growing segment of our population as well. So that could be, if we don't manage that now, it could be a problem that gets out of control spending-wise. You also mentioned education. I think all of our members, regardless of party, both sides of the aisle, recognize the importance of a strong education system and investing in that. So I think we may have little differences on how we want to go about that, but I think overall we will see a significant increase in investment into K-12 education. And on the early learners, the governor has made this a priority. It's been a priority for us as well. We have a little different, his approach is a kind of a one-size-fits-all universal pre-K type approach, or at least scaling into that. Our approach is a targeted scholarship approach, and really the reason we think that's more important is because the governor's approach takes every 4-year-old and puts them into a one-size-fits-all program for 2.5 hours a day. Well, most families that really need this sort of structure, that doesn't fit their need. They need something for the whole day. And it's not just 4-year-olds. Families in that situation also need it for 3-year-olds. So our scholarship program would make those dollars accessible to 3 and 4-year-olds, would target it by income, and you could then use those scholarship dollars and bookend them with child care assistance, which really would meet the needs for that family so that that parent can be an active participant in the workforce and help improve their own situation. So that's what targeting to us means, using the dollars on the people that need it the most. And it really shows, data shows it gives the most and best impact as well.
Before we go, because we're close to being out of time, sure, I can't let you go without talking about the healthcare policy and the ambiguity of federal policy and what's your caucus thinking in that?
Well, this is going to be one of the toughest things we deal with this session. It was the most important issue in the last election. It's impacting a lot of Minnesotans. And it's not just the health insurance, but the cost of health care in the state is skyrocketing. It's mental health. It's a lot of different things that are impacting that. Part of the problem for us is we will probably not know what the feds are going to do in time for us to have to make a decision this session. We really need to pass a bill in the next 30 days that kind of gives some direction so that we can provide some stability back to the individual marketplace. We need to do that probably through some sort of a reinsurance or a high-risk pool similar to what we had before. It likely will take a federal waiver to make that happen. It's going to take some dollars to make that happen. We hope that we'll get some funding from the feds eventually, but we probably will need to put some sort of bridge funding in place to help us get there. But we have to provide that stability back to the marketplace. We can't have these 50, 60, 70% increases in premiums because the choice that families have to make is, I'm either going to go without health insurance or I may put my family in a situation of potential bankruptcy or something by paying for something that's multiple times more expensive than their mortgage. And that's just not right. So we've got to solve the problem.
Speaker Daudt, I know you're a busy man. I want to thank you so much for stopping by today.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.